So that's what I'm going to be dedicating this video to, running you guys through that fill. But before I do, just bear with me 1 second. I really want to quickly dwell on what's been happening on the channel and beyond in the past couple of months. No doubt you've all already noticed by now, but I've started releasing drums only versions for a select few of my covers. The reasons for doing this, threefold. Firstly, it's just another form of entertainment. Secondly, why not? And thirdly, because, and most importantly, it provides a more dissectable version of my covers for anyone wishing to learn anything from them for themselves. And this ties in pretty perfectly with what's been happening off the channel. This is no coincidence, this is the whole point. And that is that I have now published notation for all my parts from all my covers. So with the drums only videos, again, only for a few of the covers, and the notation for them all, there is now nothing that I have done in any of my covers that you cannot learn for yourselves. The transcription for my parts from the covers can now all be purchased on Gumroad. I'll leave a link in the description down there. Thank you so much in advance for your support. And speaking of support, smash that like button. I mean, why not? Whilst you're waiting for the lessons to start, since I'm still just sat here rambling, something for you to do. Go on, just click it. Go on. Right, on to the purpose of this video. We're here to learn a fill. One from my covers, as always. Here it is with the music. Now there's a reason I've chosen to cover this one. Not only is it my personal favourite from the cover, if I may be so cocky as to choose one, but it is in fact, despite first impressions, a ridiculously straightforward fill. As nearly always seems to be the case with the things that come across as impressive, there's really not that much that has gone into it, and me doing this is a great opportunity for me to hammer home that point of simplicity. Chops really are just ridiculously, well, for the most part anyway, ridiculously simple patterns, but just played fluently, maybe with a degree of speed, and perhaps as well orchestrated in interesting ways. Today's fill really is as straightforward as this. It is essentially just all the way through up until and including the first hit of beat 4, just a single stroke roll, but with odd pairs of those singles substituted for bass drums. But of course, this isn't a very helpful pattern to memorize at all, so we can break it up. The most useful split I've found, and hopefully you'll agree with me when we get onto the orchestrations, is this. A group of 6, a group of 3, a group of 6, and a group of 3. Or 4, if you want to include the first hit of beat 4. It's looking kind of lonely down there. We will do. So let's start with the first grouping, which, given the subdivision and the number of hits, 6, is the entirety of beat 1. Now, if you need to go away and practice this and get comfortable with this sticking on the practice pad or just the snare or whatever, then go for it. But for the sake of brevity, I will jump straight to the orchestrated version for the purposes of the video. And that looks like this. It is a single stroke roll, 4 hits, starting on the crash with a bass drum underneath for a little bit of texture, rolling down the toms and then finishing with 2 bass drum hits. As with all the demonstrations as we go through the video, we'll run through them individually at 60 BPM before building the whole thing up to 120 BPM at the end. Next, we have that group of 3. Same subdivision, so this makes up the first half of beat 2. And why I've not just gone on to, after doing beat 1, to just looking at beat 2 will hopefully become apparent in just a second. It is just 3 singles on the snare led with the right hand. The only thing to note is that for a little bit of dynamic support for the music, we're keeping beats 2 and beats 4, the backbeats, accented. So the first of those 3 hits, make it louder. That's what that 2-dimensional fallen over party hat sort of sign means above the first snare. It seems silly to demonstrate this on its own, so let's just add this onto the end of what we already know from beat 1. Moving on, next we have another group of 6. So given that we just left off halfway through beat 2, this is, again, in 16th note triplets, means we've got the second half of beat 2, the first half of beat 3. So the reason I'd encourage people to learn the fill like this, as opposed to just going through the bar and chopping it up into beats 1, 2, 3, and 4, and learning whatever constitutes those respectively. This way you end up searching out and finding much easier to remember patterns that are much more intuitive, etc, etc. So it just makes the whole thing much easier to work through. The bottom line is, and this goes for all fills and grooves or just drumming in general, it's always worth just seeing if you can find a way to break down whatever it is you're learning into more memorable patterns, whether or not they are within or across a beat. I find that whenever I'm playing through something, as opposed to thinking, right now I'm in beat 1, now I'm in beat 2, I'm always thinking, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, that okay, now I'm in this pattern, now I'm in this pattern. That way it's just much more intuitive and much easier to walk myself through it step by step. So the pattern is kick, kick, left, right, kick, kick, with the left, right being played on the rack tom and the floor tom respectively. And those being the orchestrations, it's really important to not obviously give in to the urge to lead with the right hand and in the middle of those double kicks play right left, which will surely be the case if this kind of thing is new to you. This is really good practice to develop that kind of coordination that requires a certain balance, right? I mean, certainly for me anyway, when you first try this kind of thing, the urge to do one thing whilst at the same time trying to consciously force yourself to do something else can lead to that wrong-footed kind of feel and can sometimes lead to you actually falling literally into the kit. We all know that feeling. It's not just me, right? Anyway, you gotta practice for one reason or another, right? So here we go. The final bit of this, it would have been a single stroke roll without the substituted kicks bit of the fill. We've got the opposite of the previous group of 3. So this group of 3 is single stroke roll like before, but this time led with the left hand. And obviously we're rolling over to that first hit of beat 4. So it's a pattern of 4 really, with that last hit, that hit that falls on beat 4 accented. This accent is another reason to include that initial hit of beat 4 in this pattern, as opposed to just taking a pattern of 3 and leaving that hit for beat 4 entirely. It means that we can more comfortably pull off the really subtle crescendo through the strokes that lead up to that final accent. That dynamic shift is as much a part of the fill as the physical strokes that make it up. So yeah, we need it here. For those who might be struggling with the whole left-hand lead vibe going on here, and they're probably thinking to themselves, oh, I understand why we had to do it for the toms before, but why do we have to do it now? Well, the truth is that that's just the way I did it, because it just felt more natural for me to build up to that accented beat 4 on my right hand, and therefore, given the subdivision, having to start that roll on my left. This is obviously true for me, that whole feels more natural kind of thing, because as with all my covers, these things aren't written out or anything in advance. I don't think that deeply about them. I just learn them and play them, and I've obviously, upon watching it back, just naturally resorted to the left-hand lead so that that right-hand accent happens. But I recognize that this is definitely a subconscious personal preference. So if for this last bit you would rather go right, left, instead of left, right, then by all means. And to round this whole thing off, we've got a really simple right, kick, kick. But bear in mind that that first right is what was the last right in the previous pattern. So yeah, that overlap, keep it in mind. This time though, we're playing in 8th note triplets rather than 16th note triplets. So we're halving the speed. This is such a ridiculously cool, simple, probably overused, but powerful musical, rhythmic effect. That drop in subdivision, or whatever you want to call it, and it does always seem to have the best impact when it's triplets, leads to that sort of stuttering effect in the rhythm. It kind of feels like the music is faltering slightly in a weird tension building kind of way. But then it finds itself again on the next downbeat and the tension is really effectively released. And because this track is 120 beats per minute, that one beat is literally half a second long, such a short amount of time, and yet the effect is still noticeable and felt. It's the small things in life, people. It's the small things. Right, let's start putting all this together. I've rambled on about everything that I've wanted to, so let's just dive into playing this thing all the way through. We'll start at the usual 60, but then we'll move to 90, and finally, the tempo of the song, 120 beats per minute. Okay, so hopefully this will be a fun little lick for you to learn. How difficult you find it is obviously going to be different for different people, and if you do find it difficult, then all the more reason to practice it, to make you a better drummer. But whatever the case, I hope you can appreciate the simple nature upon which this is constructed. It's just singles and kicks. And again, that's the point. These crazy things that you see drummers do sometimes are more often than not really simple things underneath. Not easy, of course, but simple. Right, I'll be off. Thank you so much for watching, people. I really hope you enjoyed the video. I'll be carrying on with these and a few more drums only videos for the next few weeks, but then I will be back in the studio and more covers will follow straight after. For now though, namaste.